Hello and welcome once again to our next in our series of videos. Today we're talking again about some rather miscellaneous things, things that don't really fit anywhere else. That's why I'm trying to save those for the videos. This should be a pretty short video. There's not a ton to talk about, but both of these two things come up here and there, and I just thought I'd throw them out to you. First, I have it out of order kind of in my comment at the top. We'll talk first about what's called the pre-increment versus the post-increment. As you can see up here, you have the plus plus x and the x plus plus. Remember, the plus plus means add 1, just like C++. And so you might see here or there, maybe find a code online, find code in the book, wherever. Sometimes the plus plus is before, sometimes it's after. I tend to always put it after. But I just want to show you what the difference is. So if we just get into this, let's say we have a variable for age, and we'll say age 1. Age 1 will set to be 17. Okay, so if I print out age 1, I think we can all agree that's going to be 17. Not much to understand about that. But then let's say I do age 1 plus plus, all right there in the output. And then I once again say age 1. So I don't believe we've done anything like that before. When you have a mathematical operation happening at the same time as an output. Now the thing is, there's an order of operations that's not really happening at the same time, and that's what this is all about. The post increment operator means the plus plus, the add 1 follows after. And so when you do this, you're going to get 17, but then what comes next, it's actually still going to be 17 because you're printing out the variable and then you're incrementing it. After you've incremented on the next line, then when you print it out again, it's 18. So it has incremented it, it's just printing and then incrementing. Again, because of the order of operations. If I, just as a quick example then, do this for age 2, so let me just go through and quickly 2, 2, 2. But let's put the plus plus in the beginning. Wait for it. So here, as probably you expected, it's going to print out 17. Age 2 is 17. And then plus plus, and then print out age 2. And then age 2, so 17, 18, 18 versus 17, 17, 18. Is this something that's going to come up very often? Probably not. But some people have asked in our for loops, why do we, and when I say we, I mean if you're learning from me, this is how I typically do it. If you do that, the plus plus comes after the x, and if I do this again, but I put the plus plus there, well, what's going to happen? And let me just put a little C out endo in between because my output tends to get squished. Let's do it. So 1 to 10, 1 to 10? Yeah, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. There's 1 to 10. There's 1 to 10. See, when you do it in a for loop, that plus plus, where it's at is trivial. Doesn't matter. It's still going to increment properly from 1 to 10. It'll start on 1, end on 10, and so it doesn't really matter there. Is this something that's going to come up in class? I mean, to be quite honest and perfectly blunt with you, it's probably not. But I do know that that code's out there. I won't say it's a preferencing because there is a difference, but for our purposes, I would say nothing to worry about right now when you're in a second-year programming class. So, the other thing to talk about in the video then is the negation operator. So if I come down here, let's make another variable. Let's do int. Let's do num this time, and we'll say num starts at 0. So the negation operator is the word not. It's a symbol, it's the exclamation mark that means negate, make it the opposite. I am running, I am not running. Those are two opposites. Not rocket science here. So when you negate something, you're making the expression the opposite. So, for example, if I said while true, we know that's an infinite loop. So in there is a statement that should be true. When it's false, it stops. So the negation operator, if I say put an exclamation mark in front of that, and then I need some braces or some parentheses, now it's the opposite. It's kind of like putting a negative sign in front of a variable. Like if it's 5, now it's -5. So if I replace that word true with an expression, if I said something like, while the num is odd, or when the number is even, mod 2 equals 0, right? You take a number, divide it by 2, and you get no remainder. So 0 is odd. Gosh, I keep saying it's wrong. Edit. 0 is even. 0 divided by 2 is a remainder 0. Sorry about that. I'm trying to talk quickly and blah, 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 blah. So anyway. So that statement currently is true because 0 is even. Right. So if I say num quote is even and down, and then I say num plus plus. Right? Now, I know this is sort of silly because it's going to alternate odd, even, even, odd. So it's only going to print it out one single time. So let's make it a little bit more advanced, let's say. Let's say if the number is divisible by 5. So num mod 5 equals 0. So instead of this, we'll say num is divisible by 5. Right? So now when I run it, 0 is divisible by 5. So it's only going to print out one time because 1 is not divisible by 5. All right. So remember I talked about the word while versus the word until. They're sort of antonyms. I am running while the sun's up. I am running until the sun goes down. Like you're basically saying the same thing, just in a sort of roundabout different way. So by putting the exclamation mark in front of something, you're negating it. Now, in this case, I could just do that, right? The opposite of equals is double equals. So here, the loop will never run because the number is divisible by 5, and then you just said don't do it if it is, right? So if I start num at 1, now I could do this. 1, 2, 3, 4 are divisible by 5. And it stops on 5. So making equals negated is pretty obvious. You say not equal. But when you make a statement that is less than, greater than, or something that's more complicated, it gets a little trickier. So check this out. What if I say while the number is less than 5? Keep doing this. Okay, so then we'll say the number is less than 5. Okay? So think about this for a moment. What is the opposite of less than? If you have in your mind the opposite of less than is greater than, you are incorrect. Because the opposite of less than is greater than or equal to. Think about a number line. If you have an open dot on 5 and you shade it the one way, to complete the line, you need to go the other way, shading, and fill in the dot. You need to do both. So you can do this one of two ways. I could say negate that. So now what I'm saying is while it's not less than 5, which is the same thing as rewriting it like this. So once again, like with some of the other things we've seen in their videos, like switch case and break continue, is this something that's ever entirely necessary? No, because you can just probably do it differently. However, it just gives something else to do. Now, as we go forward, if we do simple expressions with Booleans, it's pretty easy to flip them around. When we get into some more advanced things, negation is a much more difficult topic. Because when you start negating ands and ors, then things get really kind of tricky, and there's rules from logic to determine what happens. So just let me end with this just to kind of get you started thinking about this. There's something that you learned in math class called the complement. if I have a deck of cards and I say, what's the probability of drawing a queen? Well, there's 52 cards, there's 4 queens, so the probability of drawing a queen is 4 out of 52. If I say, what's the probability of not drawing a queen? The complement is when you have two things that basically go together for 100%. So there's 48 ways of not drawing a queen. Like, that's a pretty simple expression. When you start doing other, variations of that, what's the probability of not drawing a this and this, or maybe with like the whole with replacement, without replacement type stuff. So this can get a little bit tricky. So again, if I just show you something that's rather complicated, if I say something like, what would be x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 0, right? And when I say rather complicated, I mean just more complicated than the past. There's examples that are going to be even harder than this. But right here, x and y both have to be 0, right? We can all agree on that. But if I wanted to negate that, what is the way to rewrite that without a negative in front? Kind of like when you take a negative sign with a quantity and you distribute it through, you flip the signs. So if you want to rewrite that, what you do is you negate the sign. So the opposite of equal to is not equal to. But here, the opposite of and is or, because it distributes the whole thing. And then y is not equal to 0. Those two statements are the same. Not x equals 0 and y equals 0 is the same thing as x is not 0 or y is not 0. If you don't believe me, try some numbers. What makes it true? Well, if x equals 0 and y equals 0, is this a true statement? No, because it's the opposite of true, which is false. Because x is 0, y is 0, but then you want the opposite of that. So let me make it things that do work. If I say something like x is 4 and y is 5, so now that's false, and that's false, but then the opposite of that is true. If your brain is turning to mush right now trying to wrap your head around this, don't worry about it at the moment. This will become important someday later, but not right now. But just keep in mind the negative sign, the negation, the not in C++ and Java is the exclamation mark. So whenever you see that, it means opposite of. Thanks for watching. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.